God has a purpose. God has a plan. I'm living His will. He's got me in His hands. I'm chilling, chilling, chilling with purpose. God has a purpose. God has a plan. I'm living His will. He's got me in His hands. I'm chilling, chilling, chilling with purpose.
Welcome to Chillin' with Purpose, the broadcast that rescues the heart and the mind. Have y'all ever really listened to the song? God has a purpose, God has a plan. I'm living His will, He's got me in His hand. So, guess what? You can chillin' with purpose. What? We are so glad to have y'all this evening. Thank you for sharing your evening with us, chilling with purpose. And we are glad tonight to have our chilling with purpose behind the scenes admin that's helping us to continue to lock some things in more and more. And she helps with our website and keeping our videos up to date. And that picture that's shown while the song is playing, she designed that for us. So we are excited tonight to actually have her as our guest. None other than Selena Jackson. Let me tell y'all a little bit about Selena. So, does this make any sense? Okay. So, oh wait, I think I'm getting dark. Okay, that's a little better. That's a little better.
Getting
So,
the light.
Selena is currently in school. She's going to school for clinical mental health counseling. About this time next year, all my little devices is going crazy. About this time next year, she will have her master's. She will be graduating with her master's in the clinical mental health counseling, and this will afford her the access to become a licensed professional counselor. She also has a master's right now in public administration and nonprofit management. Public administration and nonprofit management. She could help you manage your nonprofit. I'm pushing her out there. Iron sharpens iron. Leaders are called to push other leaders and push the laymen into their purpose. Just, no, not that kind of push, but pull them along, pull them along, pull them along. And so she has her master's in public administration and nonprofit management. She is also the founder of Daughters of Zion Healed. And so you may or may not, you might start seeing it now because I'm awakening your eyes to it. She has a flyer floating out there. She is doing her first official conference in November, right? And she does have a payment plan available, or you can do your own payment plan, just as long as you pay that $150 registration. And that's going to include, is it breakfast and lunch is included?
Yes.
Breakfast and lunch is included. A real breakfast and lunch is included. A real lunch is included. And it's not a sandwich. It's a down meal. A t-shirt, right?
Yes.
T-shirt. And then you're just going to be ministered to as well. In fact, you know what? Let her tell y'all about her conference. Go ahead, Selena. Let's welcome Selena Jackson tonight.
Thank you. So yeah, it's Daughters of Zion Healed, and It's just a conference for women that have experienced trauma or that are currently dealing with trauma. And it's November 9th through the 12th. And it also includes conference materials as well. And so I just encourage anyone and everyone, tell a friend, tell someone, and just come on out. It will be just a good opportunity for those that are dealing with trauma. So just come on out. I encourage you to.
Amen. Amen. All right. So, y'all, look for that flyer on Selena's page and on Chilling with Purpose page. So, without further ado, we're going to get into her story tonight of her redemptive restoration story. So, she's going to tell us a little bit about yourself, in addition to what I've already said, and then just tell us what you want us to know about your story and what God has done in your life. We are in your hands.
Okay. So a little about myself. I have a 24-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I have 3 grandkids.
Wow.
Yes, that is me. And as far as my story, I will say that my story starts off from childhood. So my parents, they divorced. Well, their divorce / separation started when I was 8 years old. And it was very, I guess you could say, traumatizing for, someone that's 8 years old or whatever. But so it was very messy. It was a lot of manipulation. I was kind of like the pawn in the middle, I guess you could say. More so manipulation from my dad's side, as far as putting me in the middle, wanting to gain control, just using me against my mother. My mom was having an affair at the time. My dad was just very controlling and very manipulating. And like I said, I was the pawn in the middle. And at the time I was really young, so I wasn't able to process what was going on. It's like I knew what was going on, but I wasn't able to process what was going on. And so prior to that, I had seen my dad choke my mom, but I really wasn't able to comprehend what I had saw. And so we went to go live in a battered women's shelter, but again, I wasn't able to process it. So it's like I knew we were in a battered women's shelter, but I still wasn't able to process that we were in a battered women's shelter, if that makes sense. And so my mom, in my mind, I wouldn't say that she took the time to talk to me and explain to me what was going on. But the only thing she told me was, your dad is sick and he needs help. But in my mind, that wasn't talking to me and telling me what was going on or whatever. And so for a whole year, we lived in a battered women's shelter. And I didn't go to school. She just basically collected all my schoolwork, and I completed all my schoolwork, but I did not actually physically attend school. I had no contact with my dad for that whole year. I didn't see my dad. I had no contact with him. And we lived in the battered women's shelter. And she continued to see the man that she was having an affair with, which means that I saw him as well. And then finally, she had agreed to let me see my dad. And on the day that she had arranged for me to see him, it just so happened that we had ran into him, but she thought that he was following us, but it just so happened that we were all downtown at the same time and just so happened to be in the same place at the same time. But she was like freaking out because she's like, oh my God, like you're following us or whatever, you know? So it was like this big whole ordeal or whatever. And his coworkers, who just so happened to be like also family friends had to get involved and intervene to help diffuse the situation, because she was also afraid of my dad because of the abuse, you know? And so they had to get involved and intervene and explain to her, like, no, like, because he also worked downtown. And explain to her, like, no, like, literally, he just so happened to be downtown and you guys just so happened to be in the same place at the same time. Like, it was just pure coincidence. Like, no, he was not following you, nothing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was still able to actually see my dad. And so that situation was diffused. And I ended up staying with him for a couple days. And then at one point, they tried to get back together, but it didn't work. And then they tried to get back together again. But then she was like, well, I'm going to go to Chicago to visit her mom, which was my grandma. And we went to Chicago, but she took me with her. So we went to Chicago, and I don't even think we were there for maybe like a couple days or a week. And then she just up and left. She didn't tell me she was leaving or anything. She just up and left, and she just left me there. And I was just like, I don't even remember how I felt, but I just was like, how do you just leave and then you don't even tell me, you know? And then my dad and my grandma were trying to figure out, like, well, what to do. And then they just decided to leave me there and let me stay for the summer. Because I used to go to my grandma's a lot when I was little, and they used to always leave me there anyway. And so they decided to leave me there for the summer. And towards the end of the summer, I was like, I just started crying really bad. And I was like, well, I just want to go back home. And so they end up letting me go back home with my dad. And so I went back with my dad. And then at one point, by this time I was staying with my dad. I wasn't with my mom anymore. I was staying with my dad.
And how old were you at this time?
I was still 8.
Okay.
I was still 8 years old.
Okay.
Because it was over the summer.
Okay.
It was still over the summer. And I guess they had made arrangements for my mom to come by and see me. And she was running late. And I know my dad was like wanting to take a shower, but he was like delaying getting in the shower because she was running late. And eventually he decided he was just going to go ahead and take a shower. Well, like literally right when he went to go take a shower, she had showed up. And I walked out and I went to the car, and her boyfriend at the time, the guy she was having an affair with, was laying in the back seat. And literally they were trying to kidnap me. And I started screaming and hollering and crying, and my dad had came running out and had got me. And so that was that whole little ordeal. So then when it was time for school to start, they were trying to hold me back a grade so that I couldn't go on to the next grade, because I wasn't physically in school for that whole entire year. But my dad had argued with them because all my schoolwork had been completed, because my mom had turned in all the schoolwork that I had did while we were in the women's shelter. And so my dad was able to convince them to let me go on to the next grade so that I didn't have to stay behind. Wow. So I was able to go on to my next grade. So then I had resentment towards my dad because he had a high paying job, whereas my mom had a low paying job. And I felt like he didn't have to put her on child support because he had more than enough money to take care of me. But I knew he was only doing it out of spite. And so I had resentment towards him for that. Their divorce was finally finalized when I was in the 4th grade. She ended up marrying the man that she had an affair with. And so I had, I guess you could say, anger and hatred towards him for like really the longest time. It took me forever to get over that. But still, like I said, I felt like she never really talked to me about it. I felt like she always talked around it, but she never actually like talked to me about it. And then I felt like she married the same kind of person, just in a different disguise, if that makes sense. Because I always felt like there were still signs there, even though she never said anything. So fast forward to a different story. That's one of my stories. So fast forward to another story about I say it was about 2002 or 2003, or I think it was. I was coming to pick him because by this time my mom had a childcare business, and so she was watching Emmanuel, and that's my oldest, and I had went to go pick him up from work, and when I went to pick him up, he was like crying profusely. And I was like, the different sounds of your child's cry. And so I'm like, okay, like this is a different type of cry. And so I'm like trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? What type of cry is this? Like, this is a different type of cry. And so he told me that my stepdad had hit him. Mm-hmm. And so basically, I took him to the emergency room and his collarbone was broke. And of course, naturally, I call the police, but my mom's upset because I call the police, but I'm like, no, like that's what you do, like you call the police or whatever. And so of course, social service and everything come out, they do their investigation. And at the time also too, they were doing their foster care thing. And so they end up losing their foster care license behind that. But my thing is like, I'm going to protect my child first because, that's my child. But I just felt like she sided with him and not siding with me type thing, or, I just felt like she sided with him and not siding with me, but that she was protecting him instead of not finding out, well, what was the truth, and just covering it up and not even wanting to know what the truth was. So that was like another story that happened, or like another incident that had happened. So that was that. And then another thing that happened was, like I said, just feeling like a whole pawn or anything like that, just because, like I said, how my dad had always treated me or whatever. So when I did become pregnant with Emmanuel, so my dad was a type of dad, he was always like, as long as you go to school, he was like, I'll pay for your car, I'll do this, I'll do that, or whatever. He's like, but if you ever become pregnant, you're basically on your own. That's how my dad was. So when I became pregnant, he kind of switched a little bit. He was like, well, I'll continue to pay your car payment or whatever, right? For a little bit. So, so I got pregnant. I came home from school because I was in school at the time. So I came home from school and I was at his house at first. And then I was at my mom's. And then my mom is like, well, we have some rules. And she was like, there's no boy, basically boys are not allowed to call the house. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And she's like, you have to go to church at least once a week. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So, but I just felt like, and this is just coming from the way that I was taught in church and different things like that. I just kind of felt like being that her husband, being the quote unquote man of the house, I just felt like he should have sat me down and been like, these are the rules of the house type thing. So at the time I was in Voices of Faith and I was the vice president. No, I take that back. I was a secretary at the time. I was a secretary. So I had to call the members and do different things like that, which means I had to interact with males. So one particular Saturday, we had went to a prayer breakfast and we were supposed to have an officer meeting. And I had paged the president to ask her about our meeting. The vice president, a male, had returned the call. Well, I wasn't really, like, because back in that day, people would call back and be like, oh, did somebody page? Mm-hmm. That's how it would be back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I wasn't really paying attention when the call had came in, right? And my stepdad just so happened to pick up the line during the middle of the conversation. Mm-hmm. So he just hears part of the conversation, but all he hears is the male voice, right? And so I'm talking but he responds in verbal, I guess you could say like verbal anger towards my mom. Because again, a male is calling the house and no guys are supposed to call the house. So then my mom takes it out on me and is like, you need to get off the phone type thing. Well, by this time I'm on the phone with my dad. Well, now you have to go back to my childhood of me being a pawn between my dad and my mom. I don't like to be a pawn between my dad and my mom. And you're not going to tell me I can't be on the phone with my dad. So now I'm responding out of, you can't tell me I can't talk to my dad, or you can't tell me I can't talk to my mom. Plus, my stepdad and my mom are upstairs arguing. So now I'm just like all discombobulated, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I'm upset because my stepdad is yelling at my mom, but now I'm upset because my mom is telling me I can't talk to my dad. So I'm kicking doors in and I'm just like all over the place. And I'm like, no, I'm not getting off the phone. And my dad is like, well, if she wants you to get off the phone, you got to get off the phone. No, I'm not getting off the phone. Period, point blank. I don't care. Like, that's just how I am. you know. And then I'm like, straight up, like, if these are his rules, then he needs to come to me like a man and tell me a man can't call the house. Number two, it's a total misunderstanding. But if he would come to me like a man, then he would know that it's a misunderstanding. Like, that's just how I was at the time. But I just felt like this is ridiculous. I said, but you're not going to sit here and yell at my mom because you got an issue or because you got a beef. And so pretty much after that time, I had left my mom's house and went back and lived in my dad's house. But I was just like over it, and I was just done with it, because I was like, you're not going to basically like take out your frustration or your anger on my mom over something that's a misunderstanding, because you can't come to me and talk to me like a man and lay down the rules of your house. So that was that little situation that happened there. So then fast forward to 2010. I had started dating my youngest son's father. And in the beginning, I felt like how should I put it? I felt like, oh, okay, let's take things slow. Let's like try and do things the right way, try and get to know each other. Just all the things that that you're supposed to try to do the right way type thing. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's all I can really say. Like, just try to take things slow, try to get to know each other the right way, try and learn each other. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Guess it didn't happen that way.
No, it went left.
Yeah, it just went left. It just went left.
Okay. As a son.
It just went left. Yeah. So yeah, like you say, it just went left. Yeah, I remember at one point I was telling somebody like he reminded me of my dad. I don't know at what point I realized that he reminded me of my dad. But yeah, I was telling somebody, I was like, he reminds me of my dad in some ways. But yeah, like he was manipulating. He was controlling. He was the type person where like he would lie, but his lies would be like the average, like his lies were like, if somebody else would tell you, they would be believable. But coming from him, after the fact, coming from him, you would know they would be a lie. But if somebody else were to tell the lie, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I would believe that lie. Does that make sense? Type of lie.
Mm-hmm. He wasn't a good liar.
That's what I was just thinking in my head. He just wasn't a good liar. That's all.
He wasn't.
Praise Jesus.
But yeah, but you know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, like he was just a liar. That's all I can say is like he was a liar, manipulating, controlling. It wasn't until years and years, very, very, very years later, like I'm talking like way, 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 way years later, that I finally realized that I was in a domestic violence relationship with him. What else? It got to the point to where I felt like I was literally on an emotional roller coaster. Like my emotions were literally just so up and down, literally like in a day, like minute by minute, hour by hour. My emotions would just be like this. Like that's how I was. I remember at one point he had left the house and I literally felt like a ton of bricks had lifted off of me.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. There was another time where he had came home and we had gotten an argument, but I literally just sat there and let him yell by himself. I didn't respond. I just sat there while he packed his stuff and didn't say anything just because I wanted him gone. So I just had no response. There was another argument where I told him I was like, you're escalating, you know, but he wouldn't respond. And I kept telling him, I was like, you're escalating. And he wouldn't respond. So I locked myself in the bathroom. There was another argument where he threw an ironing board. So I walked out the house and left. It was another time where he told me that I needed to get a breast job.
That you needed to get a what?
A breast job.
Okay.
Oh.
I was making sure that's what I heard. I said, oh, maybe my brain went to sleep or something. Okay. I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just different things. And it was another time where like I had got off of work and because his mom would ask us to do like a lot of stuff and a lot of different things. And so it was like a time I had got off of work. So, okay, he didn't work. He just sat there and played video games all day. So he didn't work. So I had got off of work and his mom would always ask to do a lot of stuff. And so I had got off of work and his mom had asked. So when I got off of work, he's like, oh, my mom wants us to come over and do something. So I was like, okay. So we went to his mom's, but we literally stayed there all night. So by the time we got home, it was literally like 10 o'clock at night. Well, it's time to eat. So it's like, well, what are you going to eat? You know, so I go to the kitchen. I'm fixing frozen chicken nuggets and fries. Like, I'm not going to sit there and pull out no steak and potatoes and slave over the kitchen. Well, here comes the verbal abuse. I'm a grown man. Well, I'm sorry. I've been at work all day. We've been at your mom's. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not cooking steak and potatoes and you know, but here comes the verbal abuse. Here comes the verbal attack, you know. So like I said, it was just stuff like that. It was another time we were in the store and he was like, well, how much money do we have? And I was just like, what? Like, I was just real confused. Because I was like, what do you mean, how much money do we have? He's like, well, how much money? And I was just real confused because I'm sitting like, what do you mean we? Like, I don't know how much money I have, but I'm like, what do you mean we?
What do you mean we?
Yeah,
We
well, I'm just saying, like, he's like, you never tell me how much money we have. And I'm like, well, I was real confused. I was like, I don't understand. What do you mean we? And he's like, well, you never talked to me about money. And I was like, no. I was like, I've never been in this type of situation before. And I was like, I don't have any money. And that's exactly what I said. I was like, I don't have any money. I was so confused. And then it was another time I came home and he started going through my purse. And I was like, what are you looking for? And he was like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I don't have any money. And he walked away. And I went and I hid my money so he couldn't find it. Yeah. So,
Wow.
but
Talk to us about man, the stories that you've told up to this point is an action drama movie. First of all, we got someone that was asking, you want to read those, Sandra?
Yes. Shania says, how old were you when you processed that heavy adult information of your dad? Should not have put your mom on child support because he made more money. So how did you process that? And then the other question is, that's a lot to figure out as a child, because yeah, it's true, because you said you were only 8, or was that more manipulation from adults? Do you remember what you were doing when you finally said, I want to get off this emotional roller coaster?
So you have 3 questions.
3 questions.
okay. So how old was I when I finally processed that my dad should not have put my mom on child support? I think I was in middle school when I finally processed it. And
What age was
then
that? Middle school is what age?
that's like 6th through 8th grade.
Wow.
And it was manipulation from my dad. And I knew it was manipulation because, like I said, my dad was upset and he was hurt because my mom had an affair.
Wow.
And do you remember what you were doing when you finally said, I want off this emotional roller coaster? Okay, so basically, so kind of to continue the story, so I ended up pregnant, and I ended up breaking up with him. And like I said, my emotions were still all over the place, but still not fully understanding what was going on with my emotions and different things like that. I finally went to go seek counseling. And I went to the counselor, and they basically told me that I was mild to severely depressed. And I was like, no. I was like, and they told me I need to take medication. And I was like, nope, not doing it. I don't care what you say. I was like, I'm not depressed. I refuse to be depressed. I was like, I can't be depressed. I was lying. I was like, I'm not having it. I was like, and I don't want to, not saying that there's anything wrong with medication. I was like, but I personally don't want to have to depend on medication to be okay. And I left, and I didn't go back. And I went to church.
You did that.
I don't remember how old I was. I know that Isaiah was, I think he had to have been maybe 1 or almost 1 at the time.
Okay. So that's still about 10 years or so ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I remember I went to my pastor at the time, and I told her, and I just remember telling God, I was like, God, you're gonna have to fix it. I was like, I don't know how. I was like, but you're gonna have to fix it. I was like, because I'm not doing it. And I feel like it got worse after that, because I just feel like I just fell deeper into it. Because there would be times where I just literally felt like I was gonna lose my mind. Sometimes I feel like maybe I just shouldn't be here. Maybe I should just end it all. Yeah, I was like, this is not working.
And so when did you start to see God in all of this?
I don't know if I actually remember the actual like moment per se.
Mhm.
I think it was just like a slow, gradual process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think it's just something that was just like a process. Because for me, I had learned over time that as long as I stayed in his presence, that eventually things would shift and break for me. And so that's just something that I always did was I just always stayed in church and I always stayed in his presence because I knew that eventually it would shift and break.
Tell us what staying in his presence looked like for you.
So it was again just staying in church and just staying around the people in the church.
Okay.
And just again, just like I said, staying in church and staying around the people in the church.
So that atmosphere
And then,
was rubbing off on you.
yes.
Okay.
And then when I'm in the car listening to praise music.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's good. All right. So all the things that have happened in your life, did that direct you to the field of study that you're in now, the mental health counseling arena?
No, so honestly, when I was in elementary school, I used to make up business cards of wanting to be a counselor.
Mm,
So I honestly believe it was always supposed to be my purpose.
nice.
And when I was going off to college the first time, that's what I was actually trying to go off to college to be, but my dad was resistant towards it because he always instilled in me that I was to be a lawyer. And so I had veered away from it. And then when I was dating Isaiah's father, I had actually started going back to school to be a counselor. Then, but when all that stuff happened, I had stopped going to school. So yeah, so it's always been like an on and off thing.
Okay. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So the toxicity of your parents' relationship, it's inevitable that it rubs off. It We get affected by things that happen in our lives. Have you completely healed from that? Are you still being healed from it? How has the manipulation and the toxicity, how has that affected you, and where are you with that now?
I still think there are areas that I'm being healed in.
Okay. Okay. But can you see other people clearer, like if they are manipulating or they're trying to control a situation? I don't know what is going on with my computer, but it is just not nice to me today. um are you able to recognize that when someone else is acting that way?
I think I can sometimes.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's a question. How is your relationship with your dad now?
That's the weird thing. I think for children, it's weird because it's like your parents are your parents. Does that make sense? And I've always been a daddy's girl.
Yep.
I've always been a daddy's girl, and your parents are your parents. I think that we've gotten so for a while there we were distant, but I think we've gotten closer over the past year. But I've always been a daddy's girl. But my dad is also the type to where he doesn't admit to certain things. So I think it's just one of those things to where he'll just never admit to certain things, if that makes sense. Because also too, I had an older sister, but she passed away, but that's from a previous relationship that he had before my mom. And he never would acknowledge her, even when I asked about her. So it's just one of those things to where he'll never admit to certain things, even
Wow.
when you ask him about it.
Wow. What about your mom? How is your relationship with your mom?
Me and my mom talk every day, but again, she's the type of person where she just avoids certain things.
Yeah.
And even like I said, like how she married the same type of person. Because I think that even if I were to ask her if he were abusive, I don't think she would admit it.
No.
Because there was another incident to where her leg had got broke, but she didn't call till the next day to go to the emergency room. So she just laid there the whole night.
Oh, Jesus.
But my response is like, well, why did you lay there the whole night and not call? But to this day, I've always had my suspicions of how her leg got broke.
Oh, wow. That's
All three of us right here then got a little antsy. Like, do we
But you
need
see what I'm saying? But she would, if I were to ask, she would never admit. And then, like, there was, I had saw a comment on my brother's Facebook page one day. This is years ago, but he was lashing out on Facebook because his stepdad had came home angry because of something that my mom had did. But it's one of those things. It's like when you know abuse, you know what I mean. So it's like, okay, like I know abuse, so I know what it looks like when I see it. And then another time was right before my brother had graduated high school. He was in the house cooking. So this is when they were separated. So my mom, so they end up separating and actually end up divorcing. So my brother was in the house cooking and he accidentally had caught the house on fire. And when it happened, my stepdad was at work. And so basically, my brother ended up staying with my mom for like the last week of high school. And the comment that my mom made was, Jeremiah was scared and didn't want to be there when his dad came home because he knows how his dad is. Well, why would you be scared if it was an accident? You were cooking. Why would you be scared? And she was like, he knows how his dad is. But I'm like, why would you be scared? Like, you would only be scared if somebody's abusive.
So, but you said they're not together now, right?
No, but he ended up passing away.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So how has your whole life, especially though the relationship that you witnessed with your mom and dad, how has that affected your relationships currently?
I would say Just in general across the board, I don't trust.
So are you working on that? Because okay, so you have trust issues. Is that with everybody or is it just with men?
Everybody.
You answered well, Grasshopper. Ah. So what are you doing? What? I know how I want to say it in my head. I just can't get the words out. Okay, in having those trust issues. So when you meet people, do you automatically think they have an ulterior motive about something, especially people that are nice to you?
Mm-hmm.
So you're sitting there waiting like, I wonder what they really want.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So how are you navigating that? What are you doing for that? Because especially being a counselor, you're going to have some clients that got some serious trust issues, and
Yes.
you got to be able to, especially if you're going to be an authentic counselor, not
Yeah.
a textbook counselor.
Yeah.
How are you navigating through that?
I mean, that's just something that I have to allow God to work on me with, you know?
How are you letting
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
you him?
Yeah.
Is he working on you with it now?
Yeah. I
Okay,
think I've gotten better over time.
how?
Well, I was getting ready to say, like, I'm not as bad as I used to be. Yeah, I'm not as bad as I used to be. Like before, I was like real leery of people. I think now I'm not as bad. I
But you're
think
still
I give people more of a chance than I
okay.
have in the past, but I still am kind of guarded in some ways. But I think I am starting to open up more.
So how is God? I want you to be real plain
Hmm.
how God is moving in you regarding the trust issues.
Just allowing me to see people through his eyes and just allowing me to just be more free. Just be more free and be more at ease.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you still have trauma from seeing your dad choke your mom?
I don't think I have trauma from that, no.
Okay. Okay.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
I mean, you probably answer it, but it's a burning question.
Mhm.
Because, okay, because you said you have a trust in humans. That's what I'll put it as humans.
Mhm.
So how does that translate with your relationship with the Lord? Do you have a problem trusting God?
Ooh, that's an excellent question.
Well, what I was gonna say was that because of my issues with my father, it correlates with my being able to just like totally trust God more so. Does that make sense?
No. So
No.
explain it to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so like because of my because of my relationship with my dad and just like I say the whole manipulation and control and the trust issues with my dad
Right.
is why I have
Are you
the
trying to say God had to be better than your dad, so you gave him a shot?
no, I was saying is why I have the hard time letting go and trusting God. Because I
Okay.
associated that with my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Okay. You was taking a minute to get there. So
Yeah, because I
okay.
was trying to get it out.
Okay. Yeah, it's all right
Yeah.
to just get it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are still working on trusting God because of
Yes.
what you
Okay.
have encountered.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
That
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yes.
And yet you've grown in God in trusting Him. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. and still growing.
All right.
Yeah.
Sandra,
Okay.
that was a good question. Good question.
It was a burning question.
Yeah. It almost burnt us up.
But that's good. I think one of the things I notice with people, with parents, is how parents are so blinded when they are being abused. They don't, especially sometimes I believe it's like they feel like they cannot do better, so they will stay with an abused person instead of choosing their children. And
Yeah.
it's not so much, and I know they love their children, but sometimes in their mind they don't think that they can do better, so they just stay with that person. And sometimes you as a child, you are like a victim because there's nobody to believe what you say. You know what I'm saying? Because if you tell your parents pick up for the abuser, and it leaves you alone, because here it is, your parents or your mom supposed to trust you, and yet, she just basically she turned her back on you, while you were growing up. But it is amazing to me how you process things from the age you said, I think was 8.
Mhm.
From 8, how you process things and how God allows you to understand things. So I also saw the hand of God even in your life, how you process things and understand things and making decisions. I can see the hand of God even moving, through your life in those difficult moments. So I have another question. How did you, because one of the things you said is you couldn't process what was going on, from the age 8, even when you were an adult, you use that same word. There are times when you could not process. So at the age that you are now, have you processed everything that
Yes.
has happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because like I said, I remember seeing my dad choking my mom, and like I said, I remember being in the battered women's shelter, but it didn't register to me
Right.
that my mom was being abused when I was 8. Like it didn't register. Like I didn't understand my mom was being abused. And it wasn't until I had got older where I was like, oh yeah, my mom was being abused. But at that time, in that moment, I didn't understand it. And she was just like, oh, your dad is sick. And I'm like, what do you mean my dad is sick? All I know is we're here and we're not there. You're not explaining it to me so I can understand it, so I can process it. Like, you're just telling me my dad is sick and I'm not able to talk to him and we're here. And then, even kind of like to backtrack a little bit. So, the night that he discovered that she was having an affair,
Oh.
it was like this big whole huge argument between the two. And like literally I'm standing in between the middle of them and he's holding a gun and he's basically telling her to choose between him or the other guy. And whoever he doesn't choose is who he's gonna kill.
Wow, that's a lot of trauma, girl.
So that's why I'm just like, I'm just like,
Hmm.
So even as we're winding down, I got a couple more questions for you, and I hope that we've unpacked, even showing God's keeping power through all the drama and the trauma that you have experienced. You had told a part of when you were being kidnapped. How you feeling? That's traumatic. And you're
yeah.
being kidnapped by another parent, and then another adult is helping that parent kidnap you. How have you processed that, or is that something you still have to process every now and then?
Honestly, it's one of those things where I forgot it even happened until I start talking.
Okay. So, and I've seen, I believe that I'm seeing God covering you in a lot of things that you have even talked about, which is what made me even ask about the kidnapping. It's almost like he's like, yeah, we're not going to let that be traumatic. Yeah, we're not going to let that. Like he's touching your mind in certain things, which I think that is so beautiful. And I think we have a question. Go ahead.
Shania says, are you overprotective with your children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes
I
sense.
One just because of certain things that I was taught, but then also because of certain things that have happened to them as they have grown up. So it's two things.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with her.
Yeah. Do you struggle with abandonment issues now?
Yeah. Yeah, because and the reason why I struggle with abandonment issues is because I feel like my mom abandoned me, even though I was always told that she didn't abandon me. But I feel like she did abandon me. And the reason why I felt like she abandoned me was because I felt like she never talked to me. And because I felt like she did leave me, especially like I felt like she left me in Chicago because like you literally just left me and didn't say nothing to me. And then when she left to go be with her, well, it was her boyfriend at the time, but it ended up being her husband. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, One last question. So, because of all these things that have happened and even the trust issues, are your social skills severely impacted?
I think sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna be a counselor. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, no, no.
Mm-mm.
Right on. Okay, so as we end, unless you all have
Mm-mm.
some questions,
No, I'm
as
good.
we begin to end, what would you tell the viewing audience and those that'll view later can hear it? Describe how God has been through this whole thing, or even now, or how would you minister to somebody who has a story similar to yours?
For me, only thing I could say is that God has really been amazing. Um, and the reason why I say he has been amazing is because through everything he has kept my mind. Because like I said, I really throughout different times in my life, I really did feel like I was going to literally lose my mind. Um, there were times I didn't know if I was coming or if I was going. Um, but he kept my mind. I didn't lose my mind. Um, and like I said, he's just amazing. Um, he was able to restore me. Um, and he was just able just to show me, and he's still showing me. I'm still discovering who I am. I'm still discovering my purpose. Um, I'm still getting to know myself. I'm still getting to know him. And like I said, it's a journey and it's a process. You don't have to believe what people say about you. You don't have to take on their lies. You don't have to accept what they give you or what they try to say about you. And they only do it to hold you down. And they only do it because they do see your purpose and they do see your destiny. And they don't want you to reach it and they don't want you to see it because they know that you won't tolerate what it is that they're dishing out. And they know that you won't accept what it is that they're dishing out and that you will basically not put up with what they're doing. Um, so, yeah, that is what I would say. And that is what I was able to learn in the process and learn in my journey.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Selena, for sharing your story of survival and redemption. Hey, y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in, hanging in there with us a little bit after 7 o'clock. We certainly enjoy you hanging out with us. We will be back next week to continue in the vein of our stories of redemption and restoration. We absolutely love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
God has a purpose. God has a plan. I'm living His will. He's got me in His hands. I'm chilling, chilling, chilling with purpose. God has a purpose. God has a plan. I'm living His will. He's got me in His hands. I'm chilling, chilling, chilling with purpose.